Hey everyone, welcome to Past Lives and the Divine. I'm Gina, the host of this podcast. Today, I'm going to give you a little update. So last episode 171, I aired a past life regression where I was the client, and the session took place in summer of 2020. I feel like a very different person from the time when I had that session done. So if you have not listened to episode 171, if you haven't listened to that episode in that session, you're going to want to go back and listen to that, because today I'm going to dive in and reflect on the differences between who I was then, who I am now. When I was preparing or creating that episode 171 and I was listening to that episode or that past life regression, I just took some notes as to like kind of big themes that I see now. Really back then, I was trying to understand like, what is this? What does this mean? What does this mean for like what I believe in terms of past lives? Because that life very much felt like in the future. And the only reason was because life on Earth for me was a memory. So, it was almost like I couldn't go back to Earth, like Earth wasn't an option, but for whatever reason, I just longed for it. It was a fond memory. And so that's why I felt like it was kind of in the future. So today I'm going to go through, just talk a little bit more about what that all was from my point of view. Also in that session when it was originally aired on the podcast in 2020, I had this feeling that like, I feel like this is a part of a bigger shift for me, but I don't know what it is. So I'm going to get into that today as well. And then also just past lives. Are they in the past? Are they in the future? Is it all happening at once? You've heard me talk about this a little bit before, so I'm just going to go into it again, because that was a shift that was really starting to happen at that time, just kind of shifting the way I see or my belief system around past lives. So I'll get into that. And then I'll get into just kind of some bigger themes that stood out to me as I was re-listening to that session. But before I get into that, I just want to remind you, if you are on my email list, then today, the day that this episode is being published, check your email. I sent you an email and it has a special scheduling link for me. So I opened up my one-on-one past life regression hypnosis session schedule for the first part of 2024. So if you're on my email list, you get first dibs, first chance to grab a spot on my schedule. Last time, when I opened it up for fall of 2023, the sessions sold out in like 2 or 3 hours, which is wild to me. I think that's so fun and exciting. So if you're on my email list and you want a session with me, make sure to check your email, click that link, grab your session. If you're not on my email list and you want a session with me, I might be sold out, but if I'm not, I'll be opening it up to the public after this weekend if I have anything left. So in the future, if you're listening to this, make sure you're on my email list. Go to pastlivesandthedivine.com and be the first one to know when my schedule opens up, when I have retreats opening up. You'll be the first to know when kinship opens up, hypnotic arts opens up. So make sure to get on that email list. Okay, everybody, are you ready? Gather around the fire for my reflection and just a little update on where I am now, over 3 years after my session that I shared with you in last week's episode. First, as I reflect on this hypnosis session where I went to another lifetime to learn some things in 2020, the intention for this session was for me to really connect with like my own personal power, just learn more about kind of like my talents, my gifts. What does that mean going forward? And at that time for me, I mean, I think we all probably have pretty vivid memories from the summer of 2020. For me personally, like what was going on personally was a big shift in how I was working. So I had been doing the podcast for a couple years, but had just started in the summer of 2020, just started seeing clients online. And that was a big shift for me. And in doing that, not only was it a relief that, hey, this works, but also, obviously, if you're going from, I only see people in person to I can see people all over the world and all we need is the internet. Things were really changing in terms of like how I saw my hypnosis business and how I was reaching people. And then with that was just like even more possibility. Things had totally changed for me. I never really thought of doing online hypnosis sessions before the pandemic. So it was all a big change. And I was just like, where is this going from here? And even though the world was really unsettled for many reasons at that time, I felt, of course, like the big shifts around that. But personally speaking, I was feeling my own big shifts. And at the time when I was showing up to that session, like I said, I think I chalked it up to working more, seeing clients all over the world, and really kind of switching to more of an online business model as opposed to, seeing people in person. And so anytime I'm feeling a big shift or a big change, which I can often, at this point, I can feel a shift like even before it happens. And it might feel kind of different shift to shift, but it's just this, I don't know, it's a very standout feeling in my body. And in the summer of 2020, I was definitely feeling that. So within my business, I love to turn to other lifetimes to teach me things, my spirit guides, my higher self. And this time was no different. So when I went in, it was really this focus on like, okay, this new way of working in my business, tell me, show me a way that I can stand more in my power, which just makes me feel more creative, more in control, which leads to even more creativity and more ideas and more things and ways to connect with people and work with people. And that's what I was craving at that time. Of course, now in hindsight, I can see that it was shifts so much bigger than for me personally work. I currently no longer live in Minnesota. Alex and I aren't married anymore. We're still good friends, but we're not married. And I really felt like that time was of course, like an isolated time, but it really gave me a chance to like slow down and stop and be like, what feels good when life goes back to quote normal? What do you want to keep around? What have you let go of in this time of isolation that feels good to let go of? And with that came so many changes and so many shifts in my life that I was just standing kind of on the edge of that at that time too. But I chalked it all up to, personally for me, work was really in the front of my mind because being isolated at home, it was one of the things I was doing a lot of, and it had just changed dramatically. Okay, so first going into this first past life, or what I thought was a past life scene. I often use the term scene. You can use memory. I use both of them. But I went into this session thinking it was a past life regression, set the intention to experience a life that would allow me to just embrace my gifts more. Well, when we went into that, and in the first scene, if you remember listening in episode 171, that first scene, I had a lot of doubt. And in the original recording, so what you don't hear in episode 171 is all the dead air, all of the time I spent when the hypnotist in this session would ask me, the client, a question. It would take me so long to get the answer, and it was because I was totally doubting it. So when we came into that first scene, I was really focused on kind of like the red rock around me, the red sand and dust and kind of gravel around me. And the sky was purple. And it was really this feeling of, I am not on Earth. And I doubted that so much. And at this point in my journey, 3.5 years later, I personally have had multiple experiences on a red planet. I don't know if they were all different, kind of seems like maybe. But I've had multiple experiences on different planets, so that to me wouldn't be that hard to reconcile. It would just be like, oh, I'm going with this. And the longer or more often we do hypnotic journeys, the more information we get, the more vivid the imagery, if we're someone who sees things visually, the more vivid any sensation, emotions, feelings, knowings. And so with that, over the course of the last 3.5 years, I've just had more and more experiences in hypnotic trance, myself as the client and being the facilitator of these sessions, working with hundreds of people or even thousands at this point in their own journeys into these other lifetimes. And since then, I've just had so many experiences that have stretched my mind in a way where it wouldn't even faze me now if I was a completely different, like, animal on a different planet. So in that session, what really stood out to me was how much doubt I had still at that time. And it really gave me a lot of compassion, even more compassion for the people showing up to past lives in the divine, showing up to my one-on-one sessions, showing up to group hypnosis, who are like, I'm a little nervous. I'm brand new to this. And listening to this session, I was like, man, even how many years? If that session took place in 2020, I started doing hypnosis in 2013, started doing past life journeying with hypnosis in 2015. It's like, that's a long time. And I was still experiencing doubt. So it really just gave me a lot of compassion for my own journey and then the people who are just learning about hypnosis now. Some of my most impactful, memorable memories and scenes from other lifetimes that I've experienced have definitely been on a reddish red planet. I don't know. I'm just calling it a red planet. I don't know. At one point in a past life journey or in a hypnotic journey to another lifetime, the facilitator of the session had asked the name of the planet, and it was more like a number that I got instead of a name. So it was as if where I came from, the work I was doing, we referred to these planets as just like a simple, like, long number. And the long number was an indicator of this is just one planet in a long line of planets that we have explored. And when I say we, it was like we as a society or a civilization or a group of beings that were out exploring. And I've shared some of these sessions on the podcast. If you'll remember, one of them was earlier this year, and I was really focusing on healthy detachment. And that is a lifetime on a red planet that I still think about a lot. And honestly, I think about it probably every day. And because this was my first experience in hypnosis in another lifetime on another planet, it really stands out to me as kind of like the one that started it all. In terms of third dimension, Gina having experiences of other lifetimes, memories, and being on another planet. So this one is special to me because of that reason. And it's funny how much doubt I had. And I guess just to focus on that doubt a little bit, it was one of the things that in re-listening to that session, and when it was originally aired in October of 2020 on Past Lives in the Divine, what I was really having a hard time, even at that time, a few months after the session, was just like reconciling kind of what I experienced. Is this the future? What does this mean? What does this mean for what I believe? And as you've been hearing me say for 5.5 years on this podcast, I'm completely open to my views changing. And what I believe is that in these unseen realms around us, where we go when we die, what is that light within us that's no longer there when we're dead? What can we access in our dreams? What can we access in hypnosis? What can we access using psychedelics? What can we access using breathwork? All of these things, modalities that I love to dabble in, I knew that at the beginning of this journey, or what I felt like was the beginning of part of my journey when I started this podcast, I really knew that I'm going to learn some things. I'm going to grow and change. I might wake up one day and not believe in past lives. That's okay. And that was the intention I started the podcast with, and all of these conversations, that's how I wanted them to start. I never wanted to feel like, yep, you're coming to me for all these answers because I have them, because there's no way. There's no human that knows everything about these unseen realms. And if they talk like they do, that to me is a signal to run in the other direction. We don't know. And if someone cannot have the humility, the groundedness, the authenticity to show up in that space, and be able to say, like, I don't know, but here's my experience. Like, those are the people that I want to hang out with. Those are the people that I want to talk to. I change my mind. Things change. That's life. People change their mind. Me too. And I never wanted to feel boxed in. So right now, as I record this, I don't see past lives as in the past. I don't see future lives, like these lives on a red planet, as in the future. My own personal belief right now is that it's all happening at once. And it might feel like the past based on the time frame. It might feel like the future based on the time frame. But it's all happening at once. So we can access this anytime we want. And we can do it spontaneously or intentionally with the modalities I mentioned before: breathwork, hypnosis, psychedelics, meditation, dream work, and so much more. But things change. So I really believe that, even to say past life regression, I've said it before on this podcast. I said it before while I was getting trained in past life regression in 2018, is I just feel like that phrasing is out of date, or it's just doesn't really capture how I feel like it's going on. However, my podcast is called Past Lives in the Divine. At this point, I'm not going to change the name. And I think a lot of people still are in that mindset. And we all get it, right? When I say past life regression, I think most people at least understand the idea of we're going to use hypnotic trance to experience another lifetime. Even if someone doesn't necessarily know why we would do that or why anyone would want to do that, that's really what we're capturing there. So it's not, and the way I lead a session is really client-centered. That's how we teach people in the hypnotic arts training. That's how I show up to my work. So it's, if someone were to show up in a session and they have completely different beliefs than me, you all know I'm always down with that. I love hearing other people's beliefs, and we move into these sessions with the client's intentions, beliefs, phrasing, words, in order to make the session just more impactful for them. Which is cool, because as a client, you can grow and evolve and still access this wonderful healing modality. Another thing, too, that has shifted since the summer of 2020 is the idea of these are my past lives. Where I'm at right now, I feel that we are all one. We are all one. We are the universe experiencing itself. And another thing that feels depressing, but is true, is that in 2020, I would have said, these are my past lives and my soul's experience. And the world, the universe is conspiring for me, and it is benevolent. And I don't believe that anymore. I do believe that as a human, I have the ability to focus on things, carry points of view within me, make decisions with beliefs and values that are stored consciously and subconsciously in my mind. And I believe that it's in that, the power of the human mind, the power of attention, the power of intention, that a human can show up and really feel like this world is against me, or this world is for me, or this world is totally neutral, or somewhere in between all of that. And where I'm at right now, I believe that the world just is. It is how it is, and it's the universe experiencing itself. And that's why I can do a past life regression and experience a past life of maybe someone well-known in history, and then someone else you know of has experienced a past life as that person in history as well. And I think what we're doing is we're accessing the collective consciousness of humanity. And so it's not that it's your life or my life, it's that it's ours. Like, we are all one. We are all a part of this universe experiencing itself. And we get and when I say our world or my world in this next sentence, this next explanation, I mean the world you live in every day. Anytime in the world there's like violence, horrible things going on. But in your life, in my life every day, that's the world that I can really change in a way where I can see that change and feel that change on a daily basis. That's not to say we shouldn't work on the bigger issues and become educated on and take action that feels appropriate for us and our beliefs and our values and the greater world we want to see. I think that's important. But what's even more important is our lived experience in our daily life. And so, if I am an asshole who thinks everyone's an asshole and the world's out to get me, because I am a powerful human with the ability to direct my attention and live with some kind of intention that taints the world, the filter in which I live, then the world can feel that way. But if I'm in that space and I'm like, but you know what? I want to feel differently. I want to feel like the world is good. Then I can make the effort to see more good in the world. And that alone can change the world I live in, my daily experience. So instead of focusing on the person, at the post office or at Target or at the grocery store who was crabby, I could focus on the 3 people who made eye contact with me and smiled. And sure, that might not change the world on a greater scale, but that would change my existence in this world to showing up feeling relaxed, more calm, at least neutral. That to me, that's where I can access my generosity and my creativity the best. And I don't think that I'm unique like that. I think humans are like that. And I think that's the power of a gratitude list. I think that's the power of meditation and focusing on the good things in your life, or bringing in more good things in your life. That's the power of it. Because when we can feel more fulfilled, more calm, more at peace, at all, we're going to access more of our generosity. We're going to access more of our compassion. We're going to access more of our creativity, not only to make our life better, but I think as a human that's balanced and open, that accessing that within any human is going to help make anyone's world better. I inherently believe that humans are good. And so if we have our needs met on a level where we can access some rest, some rejuvenation, some creativity, some play, I think that is the fertile ground for great ideas, for truly loving each other. Not just saying, I care, so I voted, and fuck your existence for the rest of time. I'm going to do what I want. When a human can access this feeling of calm, peace, and fulfillment within themselves, it's easier to give from the overflow, be generous. And we need more of that in this fucking world. That's what I think, right? So that is how I'm living. It's like, I believe that the world needs more of that. I need and want more of that. So I'm going to do that. And that's what I think, what I mean by we're all going to find, humans are inherently good. We're all going to find our way forward. We would all have access to better ideas, more kindness and compassion to each other if we had our needs met and we had some space and time to relax, rejuvenate, rest, and, create a fertile space for even more ideas, even more creativity, instead of just focusing on like how we're different or getting angry when other people have needs, and we are getting angry because we feel like, well, we don't ever have time for needs. Why do you get time for needs? So just bringing it back, I really do feel like it's all neutral. The world just is, and we are a part of the universe experiencing itself, and we make this what it is. Back 3.5 years ago, at the time of this session, it was a part of my belief that like, the universe is good and it's conspiring for me. I don't have that belief anymore, or it doesn't feel like I have that belief anymore. And I would love to get back to that. Like, even though I do believe it it all just is, and it's not good or bad, it's not conspiring for or against us, it's up to us to take the experience and make it what we want and hold space for joy and devastation and sadness and grief and ecstasy and love and belonging. Still, I want to get back to that space where I truly believe I'm seeing around me that the universe is good and it is conspiring for me. So that little bit of like realizing that I don't feel that anymore, and then being like, man, I wish I did believe that still. Life seems to feel more hopeful when I believe that. Maybe it's because I feel like I have help. I don't know. I'm still very much in that part of it. I do want to feel better, and I feel like that would feel better if I trusted that the universe was conspiring for me. So what that looks like on a practical, like tangible level every day, currently, in November of 2023, Gina, I do like some breath work in the morning, I do a little meditation, and then I do some journaling. And in that, I'm like setting the intention to be connected to myself, see the beauty in myself and the world around me, and then really trying to identify ways where even in my littlest, darkest corner of my heart, I could believe that the world is working for me. Something I want to be super clear on is like, even though I don't believe right now that the universe is conspiring for me, I do believe that the world is good. And I do believe that I have benefited from the good of other people. I've benefited from many things in this world, and I'm grateful for it. And I see that. But now I see that goodness as like a part of that person or a part of that organization or a part of a belief system, as opposed to the universe conspiring for me. So who knows, maybe in a month, maybe in a year, maybe in a decade, I would listen to this audio and be like, why change it? Who cares? But that's just where I'm at right now. I feel like I felt better before, maybe, when the universe was conspiring for me. And now, I don't know. It can be depressing or freeing. And I love freedom. It is my number one value. So I'm in the middle of that, but that's where I am. That's where I am, in the messy middle of all of that. Another theme that I want to pull out, that listening to this session again, just reflecting on who I was then, who I am now, something else that stands out to me is my word, my intention for this year. And that is this idea of healthy detachment. So just the way I am, the environments I've been in my entire life has really primed this like enmeshed, codependent way of loving, essentially. And it feels like absolute shit, and it totally drains me, and I want to change it. And I would say the pandemic is when all of that isolated time, all of that time to just kind of reflect and be like, what am I going to do with this time? And taking that time to really, as a timeout, like it really felt, to evaluate just like what's working, what's not. And even though the word or the idea of like healthy detachment, I don't remember being in the front of my mind 3.5 years ago when I did this session, this year that has been my focus. It's been my focus as I navigate relationships. It's been my focus as I work with a therapist. It's been my focus as I do hypnotic journeys to other lifetimes. And of course, having that in the front of my mind for months now, almost an entire year. We're in November. And I can see kind of hints of that in this session from 3.5 years ago. So one of the things that I mentioned in that session was how I was on this planet alone, and it was very interesting because as Gina, if I would have been on that planet alone, I would have been absolute freak out, panic attack. Just kind of like my worst nightmare a little bit for a few different reasons. Things that I have gotten over since then, things that I have not. But what stood out to me with this idea in mind of healthy detachment now in my life, listening to that, when I was alone on that planet and then a ship came, in that ship were beings who were different than me. And we were doing some different kind of work. I explain it more in that session, which if you have not listened, go back and listen to episode 171 to hear it. But as Gina, as the client, having that experience, something that I brought up was like, it was almost hard for me to reconcile or kind of like bring it down into a way where I could communicate it. But it was healthy detachment. It was this thought of like, I'm bored. This isn't my favorite place, but overall, I want to be here. Overall, this is a good experience. And I was really able to detach from those negative emotions about that moment. And the same was true when this ship came and there were other beings who were different than me. They almost had kind of a vibe of like a little gray, but they weren't like full on little grays, or at least that's not like the imagery I got, even though I don't get super clear imagery. A lot of it is like knowings and feelings and emotions, sensations, that sort of thing. That's mostly what's guiding me in these sessions. But I will get like little pictures or kind of like not clear pictures, but like the one part of the picture of the scene that I'm supposed to focus on might be clear. And the healthy detachment came up there where I could have been totally afraid of a being who had 2 arms, 2 legs, a head and a body that looked totally different from me. But instead, it wasn't even a conscious choice. It was just this internal flow toward the positive, toward what I could control. And the thought was, hey, I'm so lonely here. I'm so excited to see these people or these beings. And we were working on something together. They were actually cutting something out of my abdomen. And it was this really beautiful, but kind of shallow connection. I say shallow, and it seems like I'm kind of putting a negative spin on it. But for me, I don't know if it's like my Scorpio nature. I don't know if it's like Aries moon intensity. I don't know what it is. But I can often think like, if this isn't a super deep relationship, it means nothing. And that is something that I want to get away from. It's something that has not served me in the past. It's something, there's all kinds of nuance around it. But in re-listening to this session, it was like, when I re-listen to a session, it's like I can feel it. All of the memories are ignited again in my body and I can feel it. And it was such a wonderful feeling to experience now, having this goal and this intention of understanding healthy detachment, what that means for me in terms of loving in a way that's not codependent, that's not enmeshed, that doesn't require me to fucking give up completely who I am or what I want in order to be accepted by the people around me. Whether it is a long, deep connection or a new, short, shallow connection with an expiration date. I want to be able to show up and like see the good in someone and appreciate it for what it is and then move on. And the cool thing is that when I want something like that for myself, I start to see it in the world around me as I start to create more of those experiences within me. So wanting to feel like myself, wanting to feel some sort of connection with everyone who has good intention around me, even if it is just fleeting, I start to see that my ability to feel that creates a world around me where other people in my orbit, in my daily life, in my personal world, start to be able to see it, to access it, to feel it themselves if they want to. And like, what better way to lead for all of us? And it's not that I'm so evolved that people would follow me. It's that that's what humans do. When we look at other humans and it's like, I don't know, that person feels good to be around, or man, that person seems happy, or like they have something that I want. That's a time where we can lead. And what a beautiful way to lead is when you don't feel like you're leading, you're just like being yourself. And in that, you allow other people the freedom to play and understand and get to know themselves and be themselves and strive for the world that they want. Because to me, if a human is fulfilled, balanced, rested, has their basic needs met, it's fertile ground for creativity and love and connection and belonging. And that's what we all want. It's a very human thing. I mean, maybe you don't want that, but that is what comes out session after session. Thousands of client sessions asking them what makes it a good life, what made it a good life, what didn't make it a good life. And over the amount of times I've heard hundreds of clients tell me it was a good life because I felt loved, I felt belonging, I had family, I had friends, I felt connected to the world around me. Humans want love, belonging, and connection. And what a beautiful thing if we can like figure that out for ourselves, what that means uniquely for ourselves, allows us more compassion and more room for the people around us to do it for themselves. Maybe it's a little pie in the sky, maybe it's a little idealist, but that's what I think. And with that too, this idea that we're all one, we are the universe experiencing ourselves. I believe that's true with alien life. So I think it's pretty easy to start dabbling in hypnosis, astral travel, the Akashic records, past lives, other lifetimes, future lifetimes, other planets and their lifetimes. And I think it's pretty easy to eventually get to a space where you're like, well, aliens, question mark, shrug, whatever. And I have had those questions, of course, as well. And a number of years ago, I ran this group, and I think I called it like Spirit Explorers or something like that. In my mind, I call it the Explore group. And we would take topics like, what are aliens? And go into hypnosis, and people would document like what they thought before and then what they thought after the hypnosis when we would go and access like our higher self wisdom. And everybody came through with similar ideas, similar information, and it was essentially, we are all one. These aliens are the universe expressing itself. So it could be us in the future, could be us in the past, could be us just living a different life. So I wanted to bring that in too, because I include aliens in all of that. Something else I want to focus on here too is making a life that feels good. Every time I bring someone through a past life regression, or most every time, I ask, and I'm intuitively guided to ask, was this a good life? Yes or no? What made it that way? And you've heard me say it so many times, love, connection, belonging. Love, connection, belonging. That is the thing that comes up over and over and over in these sessions as to like what makes a life really good or not so good. And the more a human feels connected, not only to other humans, but to like the nature around them, the work that they're doing, the universe around them, it's just a richer, more fulfilled life experience. The words I used specifically in that session that you can listen to in episode 171 was something along the lines of like, a life that feels good makes us feel like full on a soul level. And that's different for every single person. And this is why this is not an advice podcast. This is why I show up and share my story and then cross my little fingers that you've either been entertained or maybe you can take something to make your own load feel lighter. But every single person is different. Even though we have similarities because we're all the same type of human, we are different. Like what's going to make our soul feel full is going to be different. And it's even going to be different than who you were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 months ago, who knows? And so it's not about, finding externally what makes a good life. A lot of money, a big house, fancy vacations, whatever. My child not having one want. And we can really see that, like, actually, if the safest bet there is to get quiet, learn about yourself, explore who you are, explore your shadows, understand what truly lights you up and lifts you up and energizes you, understand what truly nourishes you, makes you feel rested and ready for the next pulse of energy and production. And that's different for everyone. But I loved how the words I used in that session was not like fulfilled, which is a fine word and I use it. But I think on a practical level, to hear something that's like, oh, you want a life that's fulfilling, sounds good. But when it comes time to creating that for ourselves, it feels difficult because it's really a journey of self-exploration. And another nugget of wisdom that was wrapped up in all of that I'm taking with me again, 3.5 years later, is that it's not about what we're doing as it is so much about how we feel about what we're doing. And right away, it takes me back to my 15 years working in the wellness industry, where that was something that I really saw in myself, in the clients who were successful. And I see it today, in the health and wellness industry. I think it's easy to see because it's a place where we show up and we want change. And a lot of times it's like a physical change. But really, we can change so much in our life if we focus on how we feel in what we're doing. If we really feel how we feel when we're doing our life, it'll be so clear what needs to change, what doesn't need to change, what could possibly change eventually, what could be eliminated, what could be added. When we get in touch with how we feel, it can be uncomfortable, sure, but it's a direct route to self-exploration, understanding your true desires, understanding what really freaks me out, understanding what it is that I really want. And man, if we could get that way, if we could really tune in to how we feel, I think the next step is giving ourselves what we need when we can, in ways that we can, even if it doesn't totally check the box, but if we can support ourselves. And a supported human, a human with, who has enough food and got enough sleep and doesn't have to spend all of their waking hours at work, I just think a human is less violent, a human is more loving, a human is less resentful, a human is more creative in that space. And that's what we need right now. At least that's what I see from my place in the world. And so it doesn't really matter. I'm not trying to get everybody to agree with me. I'm trying to say, look back at your own life. How does it feel? What could feel better? And if you've had a past life regression, if you've had a session with me or anyone else, maybe this is your little nudge to go listen again and see how far you've come. Because the thing with hypnosis that's unfortunate is that, the thing that with hypnosis that makes it so powerful is that we're working in the subconscious mind. So when we have these insights, this wisdom, these new perceptions, when we're able to kind of grab onto new beliefs, let go of old beliefs or viewpoints, it's all happening in the subconscious mind because we're in that hypnotic trance. That's beautiful and wonderful because we can come out of those sessions changed immediately. Or we come out of those sessions changed enough to allow change to unfold in our life, and we can just kind of watch it as the weeks go by, as this hypnosis really takes hold and our brains and our bodies kind of rewire in these new insights, these new ways of beings, these new perceptions in the world. But the shitty thing is that we are working in the subconscious mind. So in terms of consciously being aware of the changes that have unfolded in our lives, it feels so much easier because we're working in the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is a set it and forget it situation. So it feels easier to change, so we don't feel all the pain and discipline needed to make that change. So we kind of forget that we had to make that change in the future, which is just another reason why I think it's beneficial for us to go back and listen to these sessions so we can really see like how far we've come. And hopefully that gives you some confidence and a boost of joy and a hit of, oh, doesn't the world feel a little lighter today? So that's how I feel anytime I listen to a session. It really reminds me of like where I've come from, how far I've come, and who I am right now. And knowing who I am right now is key to creating the future that I want. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for today. I would love to hear your questions about this or any other past life regression that I've done, whether I've revisited it or not. I would love to hear, like, if you hear this and you're like, but you didn't answer my question, send me an email at Gina, that's Jina, at pastlivesandthedivine.com and let me know. I do get a lot of emails. I get emails from people who are like, you've been doing this podcast a while. You probably don't want personal messages. And while I do get a lot of emails, I do read them all and I will respond eventually. And I think I'm pretty fast at responding. It might take me a week or something, maybe even 2, depending on what I have going on. But I would love to know if you have questions or if you have other reflections from your own life within this session that I shared again in episode 171, or if you have your own reflections from your own past life regression that you want to share with someone. I would love to hear it. Okay, everybody, as always, take anything that makes your load feel lighter and just leave the rest.